My practitioner buddies today, actually one of my prayer partners, we were discussing these readings, the ones that I do in the evening, and I guess to a lesser extent, the one that Reverend Lisa does every morning, and discussing, should we continue doing them every day? Should we reduce them to several times a week? Should we kind of combine some of them? How could we make them more interesting? What could we do? Because we're trying to expand our audience, and that's where you come in, where you can help us. And I realize not everybody should be committed to watching once or twice a day Creative Eye Spiritual Center. It would be fantastic if you did, but that's not really necessarily the intent. The reason why I do these readings every day is simple. I read from the Science of Mind Daily Guides, and they are every day. So if I didn't do them every day, I guess I would have to kind of pick and choose which ones I do. And maybe some of you listen to them every day, maybe not every single day, but you catch up or something. I don't know, because you don't get the Science of Mind magazine, or if you do, you don't read the daily guides, or maybe some combination of all the above. So how can we make these things more interesting? How could we make them more meaningful? Can we do that? And how could you help us to expand our audience? Because that's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to become famous individuals at all. That's not the object of the exercise. We're simply trying to expand what we as Creative Eye Spiritual Center and Centers for Spiritual Living in general, and even more of a general area, New Thoughts, is telling the world that there's a different way to look at things. There's a way to look at things, as some of the great spiritual masters and leaders have told us throughout the ages. In other words, that there is power for good, and we can use that good, and it's done unto us as we believe. And that Spirit, the essence, that which created everything, is all there is. So that's really what we're trying to do. We're simply trying to help people to live lives which are more meaningful, which are more friendly to themselves, which are more friendly to the world, which give them more satisfaction out of life. I mean, that's really what we're trying to do. We're just not trying to become famous. We're trying to get this message out. So if we could end up getting hundreds of thousands of followers, that would be fantastic. Not, as I said, to make any of us individually famous, but to get people around the world to know, hey, there's a different way that we can look at each other. There's a different way that we, as human beings, can live life. There's a different way that we can help not only our own lives be more meaningful, but also other people's lives on the planet be more meaningful. And that's what we're all about. That's what we're trying to do. And that's what Ernest Holmes was trying to do. He came here, or he discovered a philosophy. Actually, he put together a philosophy that he would help people just have a better life, whether they were a Christian, a different kind of Christian, and a Muslim, a Buddhist, whatever they were, an atheist even. Although he wasn't an atheist, obviously, he believed that there was a power greater than we are. Otherwise, that's what our philosophy is based on. But he believed that he just wanted to help anybody have a better life. He wasn't trying to really start a new religion. That was not his intent at all. He was forced into it by the state of California and their taxation system. But eventually, we became a separate religion. And our purpose still is to invite people from all faiths to come to us, because we're not trying to take your idea of the divine away from you and give you a different one. No, we're just trying to have you look at life in a different way and make whatever you believe in now more meaningful to you and more meaningful to the world. So that's what we're all about. And that's the end of my preaching for today. Why? Because I got to go to the airport in the not too distant future. But it will not deter me from this reading. These readings are put together by people who are mostly extremely experienced in the terms of religious science. And they've been around this system for a long time. They understand it very well. They understand it better than I do. Am I well trained? Yes, I am very well trained. I went through, let me see, 2, 4, 8 years of training. And then you might say I went through another almost 4 years of residency, as it were, because after becoming a licensed minister, I actually had to serve between 3 and 4 years. It's supposed to be minimum of 3, but it actually turns out in practice it can't be much less than 3.5 to become ordained. So it's kind of like when you become a doctor, you become an MD, but you're not a practicing medical doctor until you've done your residency. So we are very well trained. Do we all think the same way? No, of course not, because you take ministers in any religion, priests in any religion, or nuns in any religion, or faith leaders in any religion. No, they don't all exactly think the same thing, but they're trained in a certain way, and then they come up with their own interpretations of it. So that's my spiel at the beginning of this. So anyway, settle back, take a deep breath, and then listen to Reverend Christian Sorensen's message for today, which, of course, I'll probably have a comment on at the end. And he says the potentiality of possibility. That sounds to me like something like the field, A fractal is a way of seeing reality. A fractal, we'll get into that in a second. And that's Benoit Mandelbrot. Or if you want to look at it another way, that different scientific expressions are different ways of seeing infinity. And maybe Ernest Holmes explains it this way. It doesn't say where he got this quote from, actually. I've got to look it up. There's no such thing as parts of God. In an indivisible unity, all of everything is present everywhere, all at the same time. And that's something that's really hard for people to understand. I'm going to explain it before I go into the reading. Well, no, I won't. I'll explain it afterwards. And maybe the reading will help in the process. It's pretty short reading, actually. The spirit that is in everything, the unbroken and undivided, cannot express in fragments, only in wholeness. Within all things is the potentiality of everything. We can never exhaust the potential of possibility. Do I explain? No, I'll come back and I'll repeat some of this and explain my take on it. Our understanding of unity compels us to accept that there is no dividing demarcation. In other words, there's no place where something abruptly ends and something else begins. Like a TV program abruptly ends, or it ends, and then there's a gap and something else happens. He's saying there's no gap. We shall continue to grow and change. In other words, let's come back to that. Our evolution from where we are to that which we shall become is a natural progression, all taking place within the totality of all. Excuse me, I'm getting rid of this. I feel pretty good. It's just I sound a bit awful. As Holmes states, out of the eternal being comes the everlasting becoming. And I know this is going to sound to my wife like something I need to explain to her. The good news is that whatever you might be working on right now to improve your life at this moment, its exact expression is just waiting on you to realize it as your reality. We're going to explain this. This realization takes place in the divine mind. Sri Aurobindo, the famous Indian mystic, said, "Transcendence doesn't reconcile, it transmutes." The greater current of your divine expression will rise like a giant from the depths of the cosmic consciousness into your self-expression, naturally bringing about the changes of your wholehearted vision. Maybe we'll do the affirmation, then we'll go back and do some explanations or some unpacking. I'm spirit expressing. Okay. So when all is said and done, there is only one. And that, I know some people don't like the expression, but I don't have a problem with it. And most of you do, bear with me. If you have a problem with the word God, fine. I understand that. And I understand it goes back decades, probably. So we're going to use the all, that which brought everything into expression. Our belief system is that that is all there is. That when you trace everything back to the Big Bang and before the Big Bang, that there just is one thing that exists. And that thing within itself and through itself, throughout itself, brings forward everything that exists. And it simply is. And it's infinite and it's eternal. So if you could take any point within it, and even that's kind of an oddity, then that presence is going to be fully present at every single point within itself. So it isn't more fully present in you than it is in your neighbor, or it's not more fully present in me than it is in George, our cat, who's hanging around over there somewhere. It's fully present everywhere. And because of that, that same power runs through me and it runs through you. And we're able to avail ourselves of that power wherever we are and whenever we are. It's also our belief that life is expanding. And if you want to look at life with a capital L, that's fine, that life is expanding. Or if you like, it's evolving. So we are evolving as individuals and as a race, and that life is evolving as a race. Life is evolving as a whole. So when they're saying that spirit's in everything, it's unbroken, undivided, you can't break it into fragments because it simply is a wholeness. It just is. I mean, think about it as the sea. Yes, the sea kind of is, it's got individual components to it in a way, but the sea is the sea, right? You can't distinguish one drop of water from another, essentially. So it just is, and it's everywhere. So you can't, he's saying, our understanding of unity compels us to accept there's no dividing demarcation. There is no point where you can separate one thing, it just all is. And when he says we shall continue to grow and change, he's talking about our evolution from where we are to where we shall become happens naturally. In other words, that evolution is natural progression. One of the great thinkers of early New Thought, he's out of favor in our spiritual center now because we discovered that, at least in parts of him, he was a racist. He's called Thomas Troward. And he was an Englishman who lived most of his life in India as a judge. Was one of the people whose ideas Ernest Holmes adopted because he had this great idea of what the all was. Also came to this conclusion that human beings for a long time were just kind of wandering around on the waves of evolution. We were evolving, but we were evolving just because that's the natural progression of things. But at a certain point in human consciousness, we became able to control our own evolution. In other words, we could choose in which directions we started to evolve. And that really is what New Thought, and it's not New Thought really, throughout the millennia has been about. It's about people who've discovered that they can do something about their own evolution forward. They can change it. And that was one of the great New Thought discoveries. So if you want to boil all this down to one thing, and not just to something that I am spirit expressing, all right, it's great, it's true, but it doesn't necessarily help us on an individual basis. The whole point of what Reverend Christian Sorensen is saying here to me is this: it's the fact that the divine is all there is, spirit is all there is, that there's a power flowing through me that I can use, and that I can, through my thoughts and my feelings, alter, change, direct my own evolution, and that I should be working on my own evolution. And when I do, I'll have a positive impact on the world around me. And that's when Reverend Christian Sorensen says, the good news is that whatever you might be working on to improve your life right now at this moment, it's perfect expression. It's just waiting for you to realize it as your reality. In other words, when you go into spiritual mind treatment and when your thoughts and feelings align and you keep them aligned there, then you bring about that which you want. And it's really quite as simple as that, you know? So that's a whole lot of ways of saying the same thing. There's another thing I was thinking of, which it's kind of, I'm a little problem holding my thoughts together today. So I'm going to come back to this a little bit tomorrow, because I don't feel up to starting talking about fractals and all the rest of it right now. But tomorrow we'll go into this a little bit more. But if you can get only one thing from this whole reading, and that's this fact that spirit is all there is. We're expressions of spirit. There's no beginning and end to spirit. You can't be divided into pieces. It just is. Its power flows through each and every one of us equally. And by directing our thoughts and feelings, we can direct the way that we evolve individually as human beings, and ultimately, when enough of us do that, as a human race. That's really all I want to say today. So I hope in some way, shape, or form, something like that across to you. I might come back with it a bit tomorrow, depending on what the reading is. But I would like to get everybody's feedback. I mean, do you want to hear these readings every day? I mean, do you just want to know that the readings are there? And hey, I'd like to find out what today's or yesterday's or what the reading was for the beginning of this week or whatever. We'd just like to be able to come back and listen to recordings, watch recordings whenever you feel like it, which is also okay. I mean, none of it's bad. It's all good. It's all okay. And I am running out of voice, honestly. But please pass these readings. If you really like, and you only get a small piece out of them, you know, pass them on to other people, because if you're getting something out of it, other people are going to get something out of it as well. And help us spread this message and this word around the world. So, for goodness sake, we can change this world into something better. I mean, really, as individuals, we all want this world to be a better place, don't we? Maybe not every single one of us, but enough of us, right? So let's make it a better place. Let's ultimately banish poverty. Let's, maybe not in our lifetimes, but does it matter? No. I mean, let's just make the world a better place to live in. So, pass it on. And remember, at least tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock and until tomorrow evening, have a really great rest of the day, whenever that day is. And I'll see you next time. And please take care of yourselves. Really important. Really important. Take care of yourselves and take care of others. Namaste.